Hi, this is going to be a talk on the wisdom revolution, transforming your life today. Are you ready to elevate your life with cutting edge wisdom? I want to show you how mastering compassion, equanimity, mastering ethical conduct can redefine your everyday experiences. It can unleash your full potential. It's time for a transformative journey. This talk is going to be using Dharma Vichaya, which is the Sherlock Holmes factor. It includes investigating. It's one of the 7 enlightenment factors. We're going to look at integrating wisdom with daily life, practical application for inner growth. This can involve 5 main factors. These 5 main factors are firstly, compassion, secondly, equanimity, thirdly, ethical conduct, fourthly, right effort, and lastly, non-attachment. And I'm going to show you how these intersect and support each other, or what happens when they fail, if you don't have them as a support. How does that look? So I'm going to give you lots of examples to make it easy. Today's thing is going to be learning to aim for an experience, transformation, balanced mind and inner calm, creating a fulfilling life, creating and channeling energy, freeing yourself up and opening up space for growth and transformation. Compassion. We need to learn to see the world through the lens of empathy, transforming not just your interactions, but the energy you bring into every moment. Equanimity, developing a balanced mind amidst the chaos of daily life, discovering how inner calm can elevate your decision-making and emotional well-being. Thirdly, the ethical conduct. Redefine your everyday actions with integrity. Learn how living ethically is a game changer for creating a fulfilling life. Fourthly, what's called right effort or harmonious effort. Channel your energy into what truly matters. Master the art of focused effort and witness how it propels you towards much fuller potential. Fifthly, lastly, that non-attachment part. Free yourself from limiting attachments and expectations and explore how letting go can open up space for growth and transformation. So let's look at the first part, compassion, and we'll start to look at also how things also in there such as equanimity affect compassion. Right effort affects compassion. Ethical conduct links with compassion. Non-attachment, how they intersect with compassion. So it helps also if you look at the opposite of any of these, because they can be a bit abstract. Yeah? Often you get this. If you have equanimity and compassion, it looks like in a certain way. But if you don't, then you have over-emotionality and compassion. How does being emotionally cloudy affect your ability to offer genuine compassion to yourself and to others? First, guide question for you. Secondly, in what ways does an excess of emotional reactivity hinder your ability to maintain a positive presence during challenging interactions? Secondly, let's have a look at how ethical conduct affects and connects, one way that it connects with compassion. Let's look at its nemesis, unethical conduct. So how do actions like dishonesty, theft, or harmful behavior erode your capacity for compassion towards others? Can patterns of unethical behavior block your natural inclination towards compassion, both in how you treat others and in how you view yourself? Thirdly, there's wrong effort and imbalanced energy, if you like, and compassion. So if you're feeling like that, and with compassion, how does that manifest? How can misguided effort and energy imbalances, what will happen? Can it lead to burnout, or making it hard to sustain compassionate actions? Next, in what ways might pushing yourself too hard or using the wrong kind of effort actually lead to a decrease in your compassionate responses? Fourthly, attachment and possessiveness, and how does that affect compassion? So we've got our 5, so this is the 4th one here. How does clinging to people, clinging to outcomes and material possessions impede your ability to express true compassion? Can the fear of losing what you are attached to cause a narrowing of your compassion, turning it inward and away from others? I can think of people I know who are extremely emotional, frequent crying and outbursts of emotions, reactivity, or you could say immaturity, someone behaving very like a young child, but they're in their 40s later. Sometimes when we are resentful or we're disappointed, and that results in a kind of angriness, sometimes we have to ask ourselves about that person with compassion for them instead. I went to a talk, and I wanted to engage in a lively question and answer session, but I was just shut down by that venerable. So I was very disappointed, and this resentment was carrying on months afterwards. And then I deliberately fostered a more compassionate approach. I thought, well, do you remember? He was saying, you did hear that he had flu at that time. He had taken an extremely long intercontinental flight. And what time was the talk? Well, the talk was a kind of 7:30 in the evening. Well, in his home country, it would have been 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Perhaps his body clock was upside down. So perhaps he wasn't at his best. And have I ever been like that? So this is where you deliberately change from recognize with awareness that you're emotionally reactive, and then deliberately decide to take a different point of view. With unethical conduct and compassion, think about the effects of things like dating or pornography on your perceptions of the opposite gender. You know this will be numbing down and limiting and creating a very shallow interaction. Unethical conduct and compassion, such as when people are threatening or bullying. People who are have cruelty towards animals or insensitive. Wrong effort and the effect on compassion. You can see this in exhaustion, sleeping, stagnation, lack of motivation, and depression. With attachment and possessiveness, people can be clingy or excessive messaging, bombarding, and then swamping. Or, on a bigger scale, they're attached and possessive to material and outcomes on a very big scale. So like with the reasons given behind a war. So let's have a look at these with view to guide questions. So with equanimity and compassion, how can maintaining emotional balance through equanimity enhance the depth and effectiveness of your compassion towards others? Next, in what ways can equanimity prevent compassion from becoming overwhelmed or misguided in challenging situations? Think about that with situations that you've known or been in. The second category, compassion and ethical conduct. How does practicing ethical conduct reinforce your ability to offer genuine and effective compassion in your daily interactions? Next on that subject, what role does ethical behaviour play in ensuring that your acts of compassion are aligned with your values and have a positive impact? Thirdly, compassion and right effort. How can applying right effort ensure that your compassion is directed in a meaningful and productive way, rather than being scattered or ineffective? On that compassion and right effort, in what ways does right effort help sustain your commitment to compassionate actions over the long term? Fourthly, compassion and non-attachment. How does non-attachment help you maintain a healthy and balanced approach to compassion, avoiding over-dependence on outcomes and personal gratification? What benefits does non-attachment offer in ensuring that your compassion remains pure and not influenced by personal biases or expectations? And I know in my case, for example, some of the things I saw here and there, one was in the Philippines, about the first category there, compassion and equanimity. The question, one of the questions was, how can cultivating compassion support maintaining an equanimous, balanced and calm response in challenging situations? Now, there's a situation when a person posing, if you like, as a carer, somewhat true, somewhat not, for a young lady who had spinal cancer in the Philippines. At a very advanced stage, the hospital had more or less said, you're going to die. And during this time, we offered to convert a cottage to house her in as palliative care for the end part of her life, and managed this situation up ahead for the next few months to, decorate the cottage, to put in air conditioning and, furniture, so it was going to be much more comfortable than the kind of pig farm that she wasn't an open air pig farm. Basically, this lady had taken this hospital patient to. So then when I spoke to that carer, I said, what's needed? And she created a whole shopping list of things that she personally wanted for herself. So it was a suspicious case of someone manipulating the needs and the situation for their own benefit. However, they started to, as I started to donate in on this case and take care of it and also manage the money, an accusation came out from this lady. And she started to say that I was siphoning off money and keeping it for myself, which was absolutely untrue. In case the opposite was true, I was actually paying out from personal money as well as the donations we were giving in many cases. But this accusation came in. She was paranoid, suspicious, and making these public allegations. And so I intervened and she wouldn't stop. And I said, well, if you don't stop, we're going to have to bring it to a court to make sure that you do stop, because if you keep going, it's going to harm the whole community because of these rumours. And at the minute, we're benefiting the whole community of several hundred, if not more, maybe more than 1,000 people, and the fundraising and so on. So we took her to a court. Instead of taking the law in our own hands or just ignoring it, for example. And this was an example, I'd like to say, of firstly the compassion for the person who was suffering cancer, but we had to put up with a lot of mudslinging and a lot of noise around the case in order to do the help to the person. And that took this non-reacting equanimity, dealing with local authorities to calm the situation and to also impose some boundaries in that case and protect our reputation and deal with it in an unemotional way that would have got in the way for the dying lady. With compassion and right effort, we had the question, in what ways does showing compassion guide you to put forth the right effort in your actions and decisions? And this often transcends boundaries. When I was a child of about 9 years old, 9 or 10, we were on a family holiday and I went along a beach towards the end of the day and also asked my brother, do you want to come, and we're going to have a look around the rocks and around what's called a headland, which is the cliff edge where the cliff meets the sea, and have a look round the corner, see what there was. When we were round the corner, the tide of the ocean rose and came in and blocked our way. There was no way we could get back. So with the light starting to come down towards the end of the day, the only thing that seemed possible in that situation was to try to go up the cliff and across the top and back down. So I told my brother, and the two of us tried to go up and over the top. We got to the top and there was hundreds of obstacles, thorn bushes that were higher than us. So the only way then was to gradually get round the corner and then try to come down, by which time the darkness had fallen. And all we wanted to do was to get back to our mum and dad and family, and where we were on a camping site. So without being able to see down what was actually further down, because it was getting dark, we slid the first part and then we met hundreds and hundreds of thorns on a cliff escarpment. So it was a very grave emergency, and we just shouted and shouted for help. And eventually we heard our parents shouting for us, so we managed to get to them. But the distance was many hundreds of meters, and it was covered in thorn bushes, gorse bushes, with lots of thorns. And what I want to say was the tribute also not only to my father, who climbed through the thorns to get to us and then carry us both back down again, but critically a complete stranger helped. He was a German tourist, and he also climbed up as fast as my father, up ahead a bit, and the two of them assisted us. And almost also at one point he nearly slid down a gravel part of the cliff. And so that sort of made a big impact on me, but it's an example of someone acting with right effort and compassion, because they're not seeing, well, it's not my child, nothing to do with me. No, they're going in as a humanitarian. And let's move on. So there are other examples of compassion, non-attachment, compassionate ethical conduct. So let's look at just compassion. So a few examples that I have here that I want to bring in of more famous cases as well, in most of the cases. Firstly, people like Florence Nightingale, when you consider that's someone working with very deep compassion in England, in Britain, during the time when there was wars with a great number of people suffering. We'll look at some more. We'll look at Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who was also in the medical field. Dr. Paul Farmer, he was also in the medical field. We'll look at Mother Teresa, and we'll look at Malala Yousafzai as well, and how these are in the real world case studies, for example. Now, the last one I mentioned, Malala Yousafzai, she was combining compassion and right effort And in this case, this was in Pakistan during 2012, I am informed. And she was attacked, she's a female who was attacked for advocating girls' education against an oppressive regime there. So we can say that this is a form of right effort, but acting out of compassion for those people who otherwise would suffer and continue to suffer with this oppression. Dr. Albert Schweitzer, so he was working with compassion and ethical conduct. If you look at these as 5, we have compassion, equanimity, ethical conduct, right effort, and non-attachment. We're going to 5. He was working in Africa, in Gabon, in 1994, for example, or if not before. He took a great ethical stance on life's sanctity and medical ethics. So that's his form of compassion and so on. He was actually around a lot before that as well, but 1994 might have been a critical year for him. Dr. Paul Farmer, he was in Haiti in 2009. Compassion and equanimity. So when you're working with great compassion, but great calm, you have to be able to see a great deal of suffering, but with a balanced viewpoint. He was treating patients, there was a cholera outbreak, but he was calm in the face of immense suffering. Mother Teresa, also compassion, equanimity, working in Calcutta, India, between 1950 to 1990, working with the poor and sick, unconditional care without expectations. So with Dr. Paul Farmer, he demonstrated compassion and equanimity while treating patients there. This takes great strength, and that means inherently these 2 qualities, compassion and equanimity. So you can see how these transcend boundaries. I am not a religion representative or an evangelist I'm a humanist, and for me the closest role is that as a Buddhist monk samanera, wherein I can combine these values in one. For example, if you looked at situations where there was disasters or some form of threat coming from either from the environment or from social organization, then you can see these values manifesting. With, let's just compare, for example, where there's been mindfulness and interconnectedness. So this part of the talk I wanted to switch. So mindfulness, resilience, impermanence, gratitude, and interconnectedness. Okay, let's look at those 5. So those are core aspects of many people's practices. But if you consider an incident or incidents where interconnectedness is strongly represented versus not strongly. So, but mindfulness is there. So with Hurricane Katrina, for example, there was a great social breakdown. So that the lack of connectedness, very different the response, for example, in Japan, where there was great strength of social cohesion. With D-Day, Dunkirk, when Allied forces were on the beaches of Normandy, and behind them was a force of Rommel's army, the German Nazi army, who had a vindictive death wish towards the British culture and to the Allies in general. They were seen as enemies to be murdered. So there was an enormous amount of social cohesion on behalf of the Allies and the British people to get boats, not only British, but in others around as well, French resistance and Norwegians and Scandinavians. But mainly along the south coast, there was an enormous build-up of small flotilla of boats to go across and bring the Allied forces, British and American troops, back to the safety of England, and also to defeat the advancing forces of the Nazis at that time, who had vicious wishes. Another story that's along these lines involving resilience, which is a very key factor. Resilience and mindfulness and interconnectedness. But I think in this case, strong resilience, or we could say resourcefulness. And mindfulness, you can also think of mindfulness as quick thinking. The Apollo 13 space mission went badly wrong. There was an oxygen tank exploded that set it off. So after that, it was a question of, could they survive, the astronauts that were there, the humans that were up, and could they get back alive? There was an enormous amount of resourceful, quick thinking with time absolutely of an essence to use any items that were spread on the table that they knew that they had in this capsule, and to quickly put them together and figure out a system for conserving oxygen. So for example, this is resilience and mindfulness in action as well. With resilience, also with gratitude and interconnectedness here, particularly on display, and impermanence. So these key core subjects, I'm talking about a couple of places where we can do a bit of a comparative analysis just off the cuff, would be post-apartheid South Africa in 1994, where there was an enormous sort of display there of how to overcome the separation of black and white people and a hostile, domineering government that was intent to keep that, and the gradual negotiation to get a state of removing this kind of view. Another similar, you can compare it, if you like, with where we see interconnectedness, gratitude, and resilience, and maybe impermanence, see nothing lasts forever, would be the unification of Berlin in 1990, where the Berlin Wall was brought down to great jubilation. It was a signifier of the end of the Cold War with Russia, or the Soviet Union at that time. None of these solutions are perfect, obviously, but they show this interconnection. It shows gratitude that comes out of bonding, and when there's been an artificial disconnect that's been imposed. Interconnectedness and mindfulness, the awareness and the quick thinking to respond. The 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, for example, where mindfulness, awareness of a real situation, not being stuck in the past and the future, but being aware. Resilience, to respond, and resourcefulness. Interconnectedness, it took all the countries to work very closely together. So interconnectedness was the only way to do this. We really are living on a sphere. Gratitude and impermanence as well. So see, look, we may have had a comfortable climate, but that can change, and we can change our habits. We can let go of the comfort bubble that we've known. So these are situations. There are people who can be exemplars of various things. I'd like to bring up a few. I'd like to bring up 6 names to look at under some of these topics. Let's go back. So compassion, equanimity, ethical conduct, right effort, and non-attachment again. Let's go back to these 5. I want to take a look at Médecins Sans Frontières and Greta Thunberg, Nelson Mandela, Edward Snowden, Judge Rosemary Aquilina, and Thich Nhat Hanh. So who and what? So the relevance here, the first one I mentioned, Médecins Sans Frontières. If we look at right efforts and non-attachment, so the last two. Médecins Sans Frontières, for example, the way that they were working in Syria in 2016, and this is basically medical aid in spite of politics. I know that there have been sort of people trying to politicize on both sides who are against Médecins Sans Frontières, accusing them of being political and inside and out. Greta Thunberg made her name with ethical conduct and what could arguably be called right effort. It's acting out of conscience to change for good, the common good. So this is in Sweden, 2018, a couple of years later. She started school strikes and speaking up for environmental ethics. Started a global movement, actually. Nelson Mandela, thirdly, so he's in South Africa in 1994 that we're focusing on there, making reconciliation efforts at a time where there could be enormous conflicts. He was arguing for reconciliation and then also leading the country towards healing, unity and forgiveness. So we could say that is equanimity and right effort. It's leading away from suffering. Judge Rosemary Aquilina, so there was a case under her observation, under her jurisdiction, called by someone who used to be a doctor called Larry Nassar. And Larry Nassar had sexually abused hundreds of gymnasts. During that sentencing, she was very equanimous, she was very ethical, and she also helped survivors to speak out. And that was in America, also in 2018. Another person on a very different style here was Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden, arguably working on account of ethical conduct, our third part, and our last one, non-attachment. This was in America, 2013. He leaked classified National Security Agency documents. He revealed mass surveillance practices, the government on their own people particularly. Spying essentially on their own population without people's knowledge or consent. So in this case, you could say that self-sacrifice, detached from outcome, was going on. He was focused on the ethical imperative over personal gain and loss. Another person who was socially conscious and enabling other people to have a safe, straightforward life and speak up to power, Thich Nhat Hanh. This is an example with countless, too many to count really, his activities, but we can say as a general thing, he had equanimity and non-attachment. And we couldn't say exactly precisely when he started and end. It's a huge span of a whole career. But how to practice mindfulness and letting go of attachments in everyday life. So another way that helps us to look at these different topics, one is using a what-if approach, what-if scenarios. Let's look at, say, compassion and equanimity. Equanimity is very important. Compassion is very important. The opposite would be, of compassion would be cruelty, and not with equanimity is extremely volatile emotions. So you get these two combined, and it's a very bad mixture indeed. But with them, compassion and equanimity, ask yourself this, to test, yourself in a way, or reflect. What if someone close to you is going through a tough time, but you need to maintain emotional balance to support them effectively. Second case to think about, compassion and right effort. What if you encounter someone in need, but helping them requires significant effort and sacrifice on your part? How are you going to respond to that? Thirdly, equanimity and ethical conduct. What if you face an ethical dilemma where you must stay calm and impartial to make the right decision? Fourthly, equanimity and non-attachment. What if you're dealing with a situation where you need to stay detached, but you also need to remain emotionally balanced? You can't be too cold and you can't be involved. You can't be upset. Let's have a look at ethical conduct and right effort. So what if doing the right thing demands a lot of effort and persistence? How would you approach this? Or do you only approach things that once the thrill is gone, you're away? But this might be something that takes a great deal of time, years, possibly more than your lifetime or something. I've heard cases where this is the case. Let's look at some more of these what-if scenarios. It helps us to sort of reflect on our own experience. Ethical conduct and non-attachment. What if you're in a position where following ethical principles requires letting go of personal attachments? Seventhly, right effort and non-attachment. What if striving to achieve a goal requires you to remain unattached to the outcome? Next, compassion and ethical conduct. What if your compassion for someone leads you to consider bending the rules? How would you reconcile this? Equanimity and right effort. What if maintaining your inner peace means you must continue making efforts despite facing resistance? And lastly, what if showing compassion to someone means you have to let go of a personal attachment or desire? So that was compassion and non-attachment. Some historical context to help reflect a bit. The first one we had there, compassion and equanimity. Buddha and Angulimala. The Buddha's encounter with Angulimala is a powerful example of compassion balanced with equanimity. Around the 5th century BCE in ancient India, the Buddha showed compassion to the serial killer, Angulimala, by offering him a chance of redemption, maintaining his equanimity in a dangerous situation. Secondly, compassion and right effort. Look at Mother Teresa's mission work. In the 20th century, Mother Teresa's work in Calcutta exemplified compassion combined with relentless effort. She tirelessly served the poor and sick, putting her compassion into action through sustained effort. Thirdly, equanimity and ethical conduct. We can cite Socrates in his trial at the end of his life in 399 BCE. In that time, Socrates demonstrated equanimity and ethical conduct during his trial in Athens, Greece. He maintained calm and adhered to his principles, even when facing the death penalty. Similarly, equanimity and non-attachment, Marcus Aurelius with his Stoicism. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in the 2nd century CE epitomized equanimity and non-attachment. Despite the pressure of his role, he practiced Stoic principles, remaining detached and maintaining inner peace. Next one, ethical conduct and right effort. Let's look at Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, and the Salt March. And this happened in 1930. Mahatma Gandhi led the Salt March in India as a non-violent protest against British rule, imposing a taxation on Indians grinding their own salt. This act demonstrated ethical conduct and persistent effort in the struggle for independence, at risk to his own and others' health. So we can see how they interact, like this one, ethical conduct, non-attachment. Nelson Mandela's reconciliation that we talked about. After that his release from prison in 1990, Nelson Mandela showed ethical conduct and non-attachment by advocating for reconciliation instead of toxic revenge, guiding South Africa towards healing, as we've seen. Seventhly, right effort and non-attachment. Typically we think of the monks, Buddhist monks, Zen Buddhist monks and other monks. In Japan and in other places right across Southeast Asia, we practice rigorous meditation. And this exemplifies right effort combined with non-attachment. Next, compassion and ethical conduct. So let's look at Florence Nightingale's nursing. That's in the middle of the 19th century there. Florence Nightingale demonstrated compassion and ethical conduct in her pioneering work in nursing, improving conditions and care for nurses. Equanimity and right effort. Confucius's teachings. Confucius was living in the 6th century BCE in China. He taught the importance of maintaining equanimity while putting in the right effort in one's duties, promoting harmony in society. Compassion and non-attachment. So this is more of a European reference. Saint Francis of Assisi, he took a vow of poverty. In the early 13th century, St. Francis of Assisi showed compassion for all living beings while practicing non-attachment through his vow of poverty. Let's look at some more case studies, just to get the tone and the application of these in real-world situations. Compassion and equanimity. How do doctors in emergency rooms maintain compassion for their patients while also keeping their emotions in check to make quick, effective decisions? Secondly, compassion and right effort. Consider social workers who provide ongoing support to those in need, often going above and beyond their efforts to offer compassionate care. Next, equanimity and ethical conduct, say in the business world. So how do leaders maintain ethical conduct and calm decision-making in the face of ethical dilemmas, such as whistleblowing or addressing corruption? If they blow up and get highly emotional, they can't lead. Next, equanimity and non-attachment. How can individuals practicing mindfulness in daily life use equanimity to navigate personal and professional setbacks, letting go of attachments to outcomes? Ethical conduct and right effort. In activism, How do environmental activists stay committed to their ethical stance while consistently putting in the effort needed to actually bring about the change that they're trying to make happen with ethical conduct and non-attachment? How do journalists maintain ethical standards in their reporting and their behaviour while staying detached from the story to provide unbiased perspectives? Next, right effort and non-attachment. Athletes often have to train vigorously. This is a form of right effort in a worldly sense. Rigorous training, while also learning to stay unattached to outcomes, to avoid burnout and maintain mental health. Every time that they don't make a target, they can't just destroy it, and drop out in flames and shame and disgrace. They have to maintain constancy somehow. How do they do that? Right effort, non-attachment to outcomes. Just being realistic. Eighth, compassion and ethical conduct. How can teachers show compassion to their students while maintaining ethical standards such as fairness and objectivity in the classroom? Equanimity and right effort. How do emergency responders like firefighters or paramedics maintain their inner calm while putting in the intense effort required to save lives? Lastly for this one, compassion and non-attachment. Saying caregiving roles, such as for aging parents. How can one show compassion while also practicing non-attachment to avoid emotional exhaustion? Let's focus in on equanimity. So five that we're dealing with at the moment. Ethical conduct, right harmonious effort, non-attachment, and compassion. Focusing in on equanimity is the main one we're looking at here. So the opposite of equanimity, if these aren't supporting, we're going to have over-emotionalness. So the opposite of ethical conduct, broken moral behavior, or if you like in a sense, broken precepts. The right harmonious effort, well, the opposite would be wrong or unbalanced effort. Non-attachment, well, the opposite will be attachment and jealous possessiveness. Compassionateness, well, the opposite would be uncompassionate, maybe cruel, negligent. And these result in over-emotional behavior outcomes and their subsequent consequences, and the other, equanimity. Think about these. How does maintaining ethical conduct contribute to a stable mind and equanimity, preventing over-emotional reactions? Secondly, let's, in contrast, talk about broken precepts, immoral behavior. How do actions that break ethical precepts create inner turmoil and lead to over-emotional responses compared to the calmness that ethical behavior fosters? Thirdly, let's talk about right effort and wrong effort. Think of a time when you exerted right effort in a challenging situation. How did this effort help you stay balanced and maintain equanimity? Wrong effort, let's use an analogy. Consider wrong effort as a stormy sea that throws a boat around. How does this turbulence mirror the loss of equanimity and increase in emotional reactions? Let's look at some more of these with a what-if scenario. What if you were in a situation where you were highly attached to a particular outcome? How might this attachment lead to emotional instability? And how could practicing non-attachment foster equanimity? And then attachment, think of this question. In what ways does attachment stir up emotional responses? And how does practicing non-attachment contribute to a sense of equanimity? Let's look at compassion and uncompassionateness. Let's have a contrast question firstly. How does being compassionate towards others help in maintaining equanimity, whereas a lack of compassion leads to emotionalness and inner unrest? With uncompassionateness, something for you to think on, recall a situation where you felt uncompassionate towards someone. How did this affect your emotional state? And did it lead to over-emotional reactions? Staying with equanimity now. Firstly, let's look at the intersection with ethical conduct, with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." Mahatma Gandhi. And this quote highlights the importance of ethical conduct as a means of personal and societal growth. Second one, broken precepts. Let's take a historical context. The Watergate scandal in the United States in the 1970s exemplifies broken ethical precepts. This scandal involved illegal activities and cover-ups by governmental officials, leading to a major political crisis and loss of public trust. Thirdly, let's look at right effort, and fourthly, wrong effort. With right effort, picture this as an analogy in a sense. Imagine a gardener who carefully tends to their plants, watering them just right, providing them with nutrients. So this is analogous to right effort in the Dharma, putting in balanced and harmonious effort to nurture personal growth and positive outcomes. Wrong effort, a different kind of analogy. Consider a runner who pushes themselves too hard without proper training, and this results in what? Injury. So this illustrates wrong effort, pushing too much without balance or proper guidance, and this can lead to damage and negative results. I want to give you some more concrete examples to help us understand these core. Let's focus on non-attachment and attachment some more. Non-attachment linked to equanimity. Steve Jobs, case one. Steve Jobs was known for his ability to detach from material possessions with minimalism and then focus on his vision. This non-attachment helped him remain emotionally balanced and driven, contributing to his innovative success at Apple. Case study 2, the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama practices non-attachment to personal gains, focuses on compassion and global well-being. His emotional stability and equanimity in the face of adversity are key to his effective leadership and advocacy. Case study 3, the Sangha. Monks and nuns live a life of non-attachment to worldly possessions, which helps them to maintain inner peace and equanimity. Their practices offer real-world examples of how non-attachment supports a stable and focused life. Attachment, a few case studies. So this is linked to over-emotionalness, in a sense. Case study 1 of this. Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes was the founder of Theranos, which became overly attached to her vision of revolutionizing healthcare, which led to emotional decisions and ultimately legal troubles, as she was unwilling to accept failures or criticism. She founded Theranos in 2003, aiming to revolutionize blood testing with a device that could conduct a wide range of tests from a few drops of blood. Holmes was deeply attached to her vision of transforming healthcare and often made bold, exaggerated claims about her technology's capabilities. However, it was later revealed that the technology did not work as promised. Holmes and her company faced accusations of fraud for misleading investors, patients, and doctors about the effectiveness and accuracy of their tests. The attachment to her vision and refusal to acknowledge the technology's limitations led to significant legal and financial consequences, highlighting how emotional attachment to one's goals can result in poor decision-making and ultimately downfall. A second case study of attachment, the financial crisis of 2008. Many individuals who were highly attached to their investments experienced significant emotional distress when the market crashed. And this illustrates how attachment to financial success can lead to emotional upheaval. Many also celebrities have had personal struggles that we could cite. Compassion, well, there are many cases where significant compassion has been in place. I met Master Cheng Yen, for example, who's founded the Tzu Chi Foundation. The story of her helping impoverished in Taiwan is deeply inspiring. Her compassion led her to establish the missions that she's set up. They provide care and support to those in need, significantly impacting countless lives. Uncompassionate, for example, in contrast, look at the corporate scandal that came from the CEO who made decisions that prioritized profit over employee welfare, such as Enron, and others, General Motors in part, leading to layoffs, financial insecurity for many families. That lack of compassion can create widespread harm and backlash. Or Maxwell. Let's take a pause there. Hope you've gained some insights from so far as we start to look at winding up our talk. Now you're ready to elevate your life with cutting-edge wisdom. We've shown how mastering compassion, equanimity, ethical conduct, and the others, it can redefine your everyday experiences and unleash your full potential. Now, it's time for you to take your own transformative journey. Thank you for listening.